side, let us proceed with the program. First, I'll give time to A. Chungpa, student member of Student Wellbeing and Peer Counseling Committee for the invocation. Chungpa, please take your time now.
Let us pray. Father God, thank you for all the blessing you have bestowed upon us. Father, also thank you for allowing us today to meet and share our knowledge and time with one another in this seminar. Father, may you extend your divine wisdom to our speakers so that she would be able to impart effectively her God-given knowledge to all of us. May she be blessed as she continues to bring her expertise to people who need her. Bless the participants as well so that they would be able to obtain the vital information from this activity. Father, may you present your blessing after this program so that we may go out and spread what we learn in the program. In Jesus' most precious name, we pray. Amen.
Thank you, Chungpa. Next, we have the welcome speech by Mr. Peter Tice, Administrative Head of St. College. So, take your time.
Okay, good afternoon and welcome everyone to this program. So firstly, thanks to Principal Mam Sumita and the whole Student Wellbeing and Peer Counselling Committee for organising this program today. And of course, a big thank you to Dr. Vallikad for taking her time and gracing us with her presence today. We look forward to hearing what she has to say. You know, obviously, Mental Health Day 2020 is landing in the middle of really the most unprecedented, difficult time that most of us have experienced. I think even those of us who are older, you know, we're seeing our lives turned upside down by COVID, by the restrictions that it has brought. We're seeing times that are challenging and frankly traumatic in one way or another. And, you know, the things that are obvious are there. You know, we miss our friends, we miss the social interactions. But then there's, you know, all the other things, you know, we'll see your parents or family members struggling. Maybe people have lost jobs. Maybe people are struggling for income. Maybe you're worried about when college will start again. You're worried about your own futures. You know, we've just had our 6th semester students pass out their exams, and they are, I'm sure, wondering what lies ahead. Will they get seats in their higher educational institutions? Are they going to find jobs? We're seeing job markets decimated. We're seeing so many things that are really increasing the pressure on everyone, from working adults to students who are planning their life ahead. And you know, these things, they take a massive toll mentally. And you know, this is a perfect time to be talking about mental health, to be talking about issues that people are often unwilling or scared to talk about. You know, I will be quite frank, there have been good days and bad days for me through this lockdown and through this period. Days where you feel motivated and you get up and you think, I'm going to do this, and days where you get up and you think, what's the point? So, you know, all of us are facing struggles through this time, and it is important that we are aware of mental health as a topic, that we are aware of the services and the facilities that are there, the places where to find support. So I don't want to talk too long, but you know, I thank so much the Student Wellbeing and Peer Counselling Committee for providing this day, and also for providing opportunity for students to seek help when they need it. So I'll sign off there, and I think I'll hand back to Sumita to lead us to the next point in the program. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Next, we have the presidential address by Professor S.T. Janetius, Principal of St. John College. So, you may please take your time now.
Okay, thank you, Smita. I will just take 5-6 minutes. That's what I was thinking. Therefore, more time will be given to the special guest to talk more about mental health. Now, Mental Health Day is actually very dear to me in the sense, for the last 12 years, I'm organizing this program. I'm celebrating this, commemorating the World Mental Health Day on October 10th. Now, when we talk about World Mental Health Day, there are three questions normally comes to the mind. Why do we have World Mental Health Day every year? What is actually mental health for normal people? And why do we talk about mental health among college students? Now, the third point, why do we talk about mental health and college students? I think the special guest will talk about that. I was just thinking, let me have few words about the first two things. We are so scared when we hear the word mental health because it is always associated with mental disease. The moment we hear the word mental health, we think, oh, something serious disease is there. But mental health is not about mental disease. It is meant for ordinary people. It is also meant for ordinary people. Of course, mental disease is one side of the spectrum. One side we talk about mental health, mental sickness, where clinical psychologists and also psychiatrists are fully involved. The other side, psychologists, counseling psychologists, guidance personnel, teachers, they are all involved with the mental health of people. So, from my point of view, World Mental Health Day, especially for college students, it is meant for normal people to know more about themselves. Therefore, it is apt that we talk about that. Now, if you look at the definition of mental health, if you want to define it in a simplest way, mental health is a state of well-being in which an individual realizes his or her own abilities, can cope with the normal stresses of life, can work productively, and to make a contribution to his or her community. Now, these 4 points, 1, 2, 3, and 4. So we are commemorating this day to realize our own abilities. We are commemorating this day to cope with the normal stresses of life. How to cope with the normal stresses of life? You see, for example, realizing the abilities, we have a lot of potentials. Many times we don't utilize it. When we don't utilize it, we are equal to a mental health, we are having a mental health problem because we are not realizing our abilities. When we are not able to cope up with the normal stresses of life, we are already having mental health problem. Normal stresses means every day we come across stress here and there. Every life is filled with stress. Everywhere we have stress. So how to cope with that? Of course, we have to learn. Then third point, work productively. How to be very productive. Productive. Again, it goes with the first point. We have to realize our own selves. Only then we can be productive. It goes with the second point. We should learn how to cope with the normal stresses of life. Therefore, we can be productive. The third point again, if we can realize our abilities, if we can cope with the normal stresses of our daily life, and if we can be very productive, then we are contributing to the community, then we are really mentally healthy. Most of the times, we don't realize that mental health is meant for these kind of things. We always associate with the mental disorder model, sick model. It is not. As I told in the beginning, mental health has two sides. One is mental health, mental diseases. Another one is well-being, normal well-being. So we will commemorate this day to know our own abilities, how to cope up with the normal stresses of our own life, and how to work productively, and how to contribute to our community. So that is the message I would like to give in this inaugural address, so that you will realize that mental health is meant for every person. It is the day to remember and recall our abilities and become more productive, and thus we can contribute to the society. So let us all work on this one. I wanted to have this message today because, of course, this is not my drawing. I took it from the net only. Let's cover our face, not our personality these days, because we are forced to cover our face. But let us open our personality so that we can become mentally healthy people today. Okay, so let us cover our face when you go public, but at the same time, let us open our personality for a healthy living. So with that, let me finish my inaugural address and leave it to the next program that is approaching. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for all. And also I thank the student well-being and peer counseling team for organizing this wonderful program for the good of all the students. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Next, we have the introduction to the guest speaker by Ms. Rosalie Chang. She is faculty member of SWPC committee. Ms. Rosalie, if you can take charge now.
Good afternoon, everyone. Respected principal, administrator, our resource person, my colleagues, and my dear students. It gives me an immense pleasure to introduce our resource person, Dr. Madhurini Vallikad, who is going to talk to us about mental health and college students. Dr. Madhurini Vallikad has her MPhil and PhD in clinical psychology from NIMHANS. She is interested in students' mental health, working with people with mental illness, family and marriage therapy, and positive psychology. She also taught clinical psychology to master's students, guided MPhil students, and also guiding PhD students for research in the areas of interest mentioned. And currently, she is serving as a counselor and psychotherapist at St. Joseph's College, Bangalore. We are really privileged to have her as our resource person for today's webinar. So without further ado, I give the time to our resource person, Dr. Madhurini Vallikad. Ma'am, you may kindly take your time.
Hello. This is the first time I'm presenting on a Google platform. I've been using Zoom and some other of these media platforms. So hopefully I will not make too many mess ups here today. Firstly, I think I would like to thank you all for having me here. I had been approached by a few colleges, but I was excited about this college once because it's in Nagaland and also it's non-psychology students. So that is interesting to have the opportunity to interact with people from different streams and different backgrounds. So I would like to thank Dr. Janetius and the committee for giving me this opportunity itself. I haven't been to Nagaland. I missed it. I missed my opportunity because I joined for my MPhil course at that time. But hopefully one day I will get a chance again. When I started preparing for this talk, I was wondering, am I qualified to give this talk? What qualification do I have that would allow me to share something useful here today? So on one hand, there are the degrees, MPhil and PhD, which people get. I've had some interaction with patients from Nagaland, students from Nagaland. I've interacted with professionals from Nagaland. So it didn't, when I was thinking about this talk, I was thinking that I need to be a little more aware of the culture and the differences before I start this talk. So that was something that I kept in mind, and I felt that I might not be so well prepared. So then I spoke to some of my students who are from Nagaland to ask them what were the issues that college students faced in Nagaland. And then we started talking about what are the commonalities and what are the differences and the advantages. So one thing that I had realized and they had realized was gender and gender inequality and equality, how it's not as entrenched in this part of the world as perhaps South India, where I come from, Karnataka. So that seemed like an advantage and a difference which I had understood from my interaction from students from here. Also, I understood that there are different tribes. So when I spoke to my students, they were like, no, you can't just go and say all that. Each tribe is different. And so we started talking about different tribes and how one tribe has a certain pattern or culture as opposed to another tribe. And then when she spoke about it more, we kind of realized that within a tribe, each family seemed to be different. So even though they were within the same tribes and we assumed that, okay, it's specific to a certain tribe, within a tribe itself, it looked like each family was different. And then perhaps we started to realize that perhaps it is also that each individual is unique. And so rather than trying to look at differences, I thought perhaps I should try to look at the similarities while keeping in mind the differences which exist, obviously, because of culture. So two things that came to mind were, one, as human beings, we are all capable of growth, of evolving as individuals, and different things would help us grow. I think in Nagaland, one of the things she specifically mentioned was prayer, the importance of prayer in people's lives, the importance of religion, the importance of Christianity in people's lives. So this was one thing that seems to be, from what I have spoken to people, that this is an important factor, and people are capable of growth. And also the second point is people are capable of influencing each other positively. This is also something which is common across humanity and is something which we can empower and cultivate ourselves in doing. So growing as individuals as well as how we influence others in our life. So perhaps that is kind of the approach I started with. And now I'll perhaps come down to talking a bit about mental health. Dr. Janetius briefly told us about mental health. And when we're thinking about mental health, one way to look at it is, has anyone here never been angry or stressed or sad? There is no human being who hasn't experienced it. We have all had anger or sadness or stress at some point of time in our lives. And this is because the difficulty that we face as human beings and the suffering that we face as human beings is universal. So this is really something which everyone experiences. And when we think about mental health, it is a continuum, and it refers more to how we deal with these experiences and where that leads us. One thing that is important when it comes to mental health is also stigma and blame. When I was speaking to my student about it, and I was like, what do you think I should talk about? And she said she did her internship. She's a master's student. She did her internship in Nagaland. She came back there for her internship. And she said she felt that there was stigma about mental illness, about mental health, about difficulties, about stress, about approaching mental health professionals like counselors or psychiatrists or psychologists. So she said she wished that this was something that could be addressed. So I was like, yeah, I'll do my best. And then after you're done with your, she wants to study further. I was like, you can go back and then you can give the lecture next time. So this is one thing I think which is important, that it's a continuum, and some people may have a more difficult time than others. And we should be aware that it's something that we ourselves could suffer from at some point of time in our lives. It's just a matter of stress and what resources we have to cope with it. When it comes to mental illness, we have labels. Psychiatrists say you're schizophrenic, you're depressed, you have bipolar disorder or OCD or whatever. We have so many labels as mental health professionals. And what is the purpose of the label? It's just a shorthand. It just helps us communicate about some signs fast and helps us discuss treatment fast. That is the purpose of the label. But what has happened over the years is these labels get misused. We kind of, we call somebody mad, or we call somebody psycho, or we use these labels to pull down others. We use these labels to invalidate somebody else's experience and to make ourselves feel better about ourselves. But it's actually just a matter of degree. And, it's just about how we manage to cope with it and whether we are lucky enough that we have resources. So that is kind of, if you're looking at mental illness, that is something that, and mental health, that is something that we should be aware of, that it's really a continuum. How do you know how you are mentally? How is your mental health? One way to look at it is, how do you feel and how do the people around you feel? If you don't feel good, and if the people around you are not feeling good, then it means it's a sign that something needs to change. If we don't address it, it might go on to stress, anxiety, depression, all these mental illnesses. But another way of looking at it is these are signs for a change, that we need to change something about our lives. We need to change our approach, we need to change our attitude towards people, or we need to change the kind of action we are taking when we have difficulties in our lives. So some people get a diagnosis, maybe they meet a psychiatrist and they get a diagnosis. Many people don't get diagnosed. So, and they go about their lives. It is not as if it is a permanent aspect of your life. It can be a phase where you may have symptoms. And you may also have some things which are they don't even qualify as a symptom. It doesn't even qualify as a mental illness. It's the normal stress, anxiety, exam fear, things like that, which would happen. Of course, I should also state that when it comes to serious mental illness, other things play a role, like genetics, or if there's a certain fixed pattern of thinking that is difficult, or our past experiences, or what resources we have, what support we have. These also play a role. I think currently, in the current situation, COVID is a major issue. It's a difficulty which people are facing across the world. So I see clients in therapy, and I see clients across the country, across the world, because everything is on Skype now. So I was talking to somebody in Australia, somebody in Hong Kong, somebody in Germany, and almost across the world, the issues people are facing are similar. Everybody has internet connectivity issues. Their lives are virtual. So it becomes very difficult for them. And the difficulty students also face. You have assignments which you have to submit. You may or may not have access to the internet to submit your assignments. You have exams to write. You don't know when your exams are. You don't know if you will get a job. You don't know what you want to do next. These are things which are experienced widely across the student community in India and across the world. In addition to this, I suppose if you are at home, you would have increased conflict with your family because you are at home, you need Wi-Fi, somebody else is also on the Wi-Fi, you have additional responsibilities at home, maybe you have younger brothers and sisters at home, you also have to look after them and do your work, you have to help your parents, you may have other things which would pop up which you wouldn't have to deal with if you were in hostel. So I think these would be things that are difficult. I taught in master's college for some time, and these are some of the issues that students here have faced as well. So I imagine these are similar issues in Nagaland. I think internet connectivity also would be a great frustrator. So these are the uncertainties that we live with. Other things that students commonly face are criticality from family members. They are worried about your future, they are anxious about your future, they have a certain fixed way of behaving, a rigid pattern of behaving, which can make you feel much worse. But it comes a lot of the time from their own anxiety, especially in times like this. Anxiety plays a large role. And so that is something that we have to get through at this stage. And if you all have the opportunity to reach out to counselors in college, hopefully you all can avail services for that. Other things that I imagine would be issues are relationships. So relationships in terms of with your friends, hanging out with your friends, talking to your friends, how much time you spend with your friends. Now you are online, I imagine, not interacting in person. So it becomes more difficult. Your life becomes virtual. There's sometimes a sense of things being unreal with friends. These are some things which affect how we feel mentally. And the other thing is romantic relationships. There can be strain and pressure from them as well. So these interpersonal relationships are important because as human beings, we need this connection. It is part of who we are as Homo sapiens. We need people, we need this connection. But at the same time, we need to balance it with growth as an individual so that we can contribute, so that we don't pull our loved ones down as well. So it's important to have space in your relationships for your own growth, whether it's with friends or with a romantic partner or whoever it is. It's important that there is that space for you. I think that is something which I imagine a college population would be dealing with a lot, and it's important to take that space. A third point which has come up is social media. This is something which students struggle with. I have some clients. One is a surgeon who's studying to be a surgeon. Some are IT engineers, and they all struggle with social media. So they need to submit something, but then they feel like checking the phone. That breaks their flow of thought, and then it's difficult to get back to work, or if in the case of students, to studying. So this is something which is affecting people across the board. It doesn't matter, as long as you have a phone or you have internet access, social media is affecting your life. When I'm preparing for this talk, I want to check my messages. I'm getting distracted. I had to put it aside consciously. So I imagine this is something all of you all deal with, and it is significant. You may not realize, perhaps, but it does hamper your concentration. People report, that they have a short attention span. They can't concentrate. And this is one of the downsides of technology. So we need the technology for our classes, but it also infringes and affects us in other ways. Some of the strategies my clients have found useful is they do this 20-minute chunk. They concentrate for 20 minutes, then they take a break and look at their phone again. Some of them have done it quite well. So perhaps that is something, if you all have, if you all are active on social media, that might be something which is useful for you all. I don't know, hopefully. Another thing is when it comes to things that would help when it comes to maintaining one's mental health, I came up with some 5 points, very simple points, but rather broad. You will have to tailor it to yourself specifically, depending on your own interest. So the first one is a balance between your food, exercise, sleep. So your physical activity, your sleep, and your food. If there's too much of one happening, then your balance gets affected and your mental health also gets affected. So, you people may think that these are very basic things: sleep, food, exercise. They're basic physiological things. What has it got to do with my mental health? But it really does interact with our mental health, and it's very important to keep this. I remember Dr. Janetius, when he was in Bangalore, he used to take these walks. So this is important, that this balance is maintained. I think perhaps if you're not in a city, it might be easier, because in a rural setting, perhaps you'll get too much exercise. So then that doesn't help either, because you might be too exhausted from whatever physical activities you also have. Hence the word balance. You need balance. So balance is one. Next is social support. Accessing friends, family, perhaps institutions which offer counseling services if you need it. So social support in whichever way you can, to reach out to people from wherever you can find the support. The next point is some kind of stimulation for your brain. This might be your studies or reading. It's part of the process of helping you grow. And it's also obviously part of a major chunk of what you are supposed to be doing as college students. So stimulating your brain is also required for your mental health. Too much of it would be not healthy, and too little of it would also not be healthy. So we have balance, social support, this kind of mental stimulation, and relaxation, developing hobbies, music, art, sports, anything like that is also very important. I assume that in Nagaland, music would have a large role to play, hopefully in connection with the church. I'm not certain if that is the case. This is a strength which can help coping. Prayer, music, things like these are things which help coping and enhance mental health. So they are sometimes natural, cultural, protective factors which can be used, and which should not be lost. The fifth point is asking for help. Many people don't ask for help, and sometimes this is really what differentiates someone who develops a mental illness from someone who doesn't. These 5 factors, I would say, differentiate those who develop a mental illness from those who don't. But this asking for help is a very crucial thing. Sometimes we just avoid some issue, we run away from it, or we criticize ourselves instead of just asking for help. So asking for help would be something very important and to be kept in mind. I also think another thing my students spoke about was lack of motivation and how people don't know what they want to do next. She spoke about how the options are, you look for a government job, or maybe you want to start a business or startups, or go back to agriculture. I think she said that Dimapur and Kohima have a lot of startups. A lot of her classmates have startups now. So I think these are different trends which are emerging. There's road construction and urbanization is spreading. So these are things which are happening and are difficult and scary to find options for the future. But perhaps if you have faith and you have some kind of optimism, there is a lot that is in your hands as individuals. There is a person called Viktor Frankl who wrote that we make meaning for our lives through different things. We make meaning through how we experience the world, through the actions that we take, and also through how we face obstacles in our life, the attitude that we take to obstacles in our life. So it doesn't matter what you do, what you become in future, as long as whatever you do you can contribute. Whatever you do well. Whatever you do can be meaningful, provided you're able to fill that space and do it well. And you continue to grow as an individual, and you seek to have a positive impact on other people in your lives. And this is something you can do no matter who you are, no matter what you do. The impact you can have on another person is something which is in your control, and you can make a difference. So how you grow as an individual and how you affect others really is in your hands. I think when it comes to Nagaland, there are changes which are happening, and y'all are developing as a state, and y'all can go the way Delhi has gone, and you can have smog there which is choking you, or Bangalore where you have traffic and potholes, and everything comes to a standstill if there's rain. Whereas with Nagaland, y'all are developing, and how y'all develop as individuals and how your land develops, where you take it, is really in your hands. So everything that is good in the world that you see is good because someone thought that they could make a difference and tried. So if y'all don't try, then really y'all will just go along with the flow and land up wherever you go. And I think this is probably a stage of life where you can make a difference. So I hope you all have that optimism and that hope for yourselves and for your people. Yeah, I think that's it. If you all have some questions, I think I could try to answer them.
Okay, thank you, ma'am, so much for this informative session. Participants, you can type in your questions now. We'll take them up in the question answer session.
I think there was a question about how to speak to someone with anxiety or depression and how to help. So one thing to remember is to be there as a human being, as from one human being to another human being. You don't have to be a mental health professional to help another person, but you can encourage them to approach another person while you try to be there as a human being. So, don't tease, don't encourage teasing, things like that. I think there was a statement of what to do if we feel that we are not good enough, no matter how hard we try. I would say then you are trying to be, maybe you are trying to be someone you are not. Because every human being is unique and has their own strengths and can contribute to society and their families in ways perhaps their family may not realize, but they do play a role and they do make a difference. So when we feel we are not good enough, usually it's because we are trying to make ourselves into something that we think we should be, or into something that we think others think we should be, and we don't accept ourselves and our own strengths. We all have our own strengths. They may not be as flashy as someone else's strengths. Maybe others compare us, but we all have a role in the world, and there are ways in which we can contribute, and we just have to become aware of who we are, accept who we are, and do our best in that way. I know it's a little brief, but I think that is, very briefly putting it, it's about our attitude to ourselves a lot and how we handle the criticism from others. You're welcome.
Ma'am, I think there is another question.
Yeah.
Are drugs or therapy better for mental health conditions?
Okay. So it depends. When someone is in the middle of an episode and the distress is very high, then therapy might take too long to work. So then medication would really be helpful in helping the person cope for that point of time. And therapy can help one change thinking patterns if they were thinking patterns which were at fault. For example, with obsessive compulsive disorder or anxiety disorders, so it can help change those thinking patterns. And it can also help the individual grow. So it is not that, one or the other is better. It is that it depends on the situation, on which point of time you are in your life. Maybe at one point of time in my life, I might need medication when I'm stressed out. Because I cannot cope, I do not have the resources to cope, I don't have the family members, I don't have the money for therapy sessions, I don't have it, so I would need medication. At another point of time, perhaps sessions would help me, therapy sessions would help me cope, because I'll be able to grow as an individual and change how I approach things or change how I handle how someone criticizes me.
And there is another one. How can I help a person who is addicted with drugs and mentally disturbed?
Okay. So this is actually a difficult area when there is substance dependence. There are different, there is use, which is not the same as addiction. There is abuse, which is not the same as addiction. And there is addiction where you are dependent on the substance itself. So when you are dependent on the substance itself, it is biological. When you stop using it, it affects you biologically. And it is very difficult for the person who is addicted as well as for family members. So when it comes to substance dependence, I think one is to try to be there as a human being. Two is also to look after yourself. If you're trying to help someone with substance use, you also need to look after yourself, because it's a very long and rough ride. And it would be good if they could get professional help as well. So because if they don't get professional help and you don't look after yourself, you won't be able to look after them. You won't be able to support them. You will run out of patience with them, or you will get frustrated, or you won't be able to encourage them to seek help. So I think if you have a friend or family member with substance use, it's important that while you try to support them as best as you can and encourage them to get help professionally, also to look after yourself, because others you will be of no use to them.
Okay, ma'am, there is someone who is joining us from the stream link, so she could not type her question there, so she has typed it to my message box, so I'll read it out.
Okay.
And her question is, what to do when we have panic attacks?
Okay. So, many people across the world have panic attacks, and having a panic attack does not mean that you have a mental illness. It's a symptom. So it really depends on the situation. If you're getting frequent panic attacks, then perhaps you need to look at what the triggers are in your life, and what are the strategies that you can adopt to deal with those triggers in your life. But many people across the spectrum get panic attacks, so it's difficult to give a single answer for that. Even people with other mental disorders get panic attacks. People with no mental disorders get panic attacks. So it really depends on the situation. But there are meditation techniques and relaxation techniques which do help, as well as trying to understand what are the triggers and why it's happening.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. There is another question here. Someone is asking about depression related to tight schedule. I think. What to do when we have depression because we have tight schedules. Right?
Sorry, what to do when we have depression?
I think the question is when we suffer from depression and on top of that we have tight schedule also, how to cope with that?
Yeah. So I think one thing to remember is that you can't do everything. You have to take out time to relax. You have to take out time for your mental health, and it's not possible for everybody to do everything. So I need to take out time for my hobbies, even if it means my class preparation might suffer. Sometimes I'm not as prepared as I would like to be for a class. But the other option is I don't take out the time for myself. I only try to prepare for the class. And at the end of the week, I'm so stressed out that I can't do anything. So sometimes we have to let go of trying to do things as ideally as we like and do our best, but also keep in mind that you really need to look after yourself. So if you feel that you're depressed and you have a hectic schedule, then you need to take out time to look after yourself, even if it means that you can't do everything that you want as well as you can, as well as you would have liked.
I think we'll take one last question. Someone is asking, is overreacting a mental illness?
No, overreacting is not a mental illness. Overreacting is not even overreacting. It means that it's not you. Either you haven't understood the person who's overreacting, because there will be people react the way they do for a reason. So to an outsider, it might look like an overreaction, and that is because we don't understand fully. Of course, there are ways which are acceptable and not acceptable to express a reaction. For example, if I lose my temper and I start breaking things here, that would not be acceptable. Or if I start abusing people, that would not be acceptable. But there might be a reason why it happened. So I should understand why that happened and then try and take steps to correct that. Perhaps I'm being criticized a lot, or perhaps I've got a tight schedule, perhaps I'm depressed. So there are reactions, but overreacting per se is not a mental illness. It's just a sign that something is not right and something needs to change.
Okay, I think we cannot take any more questions because we have already promised ma'am that we'll try to wrap up by 3:45. So sorry about the questions that we could not take up, and let's proceed towards the end of the program. So I would like to thank Dr. Madhurini Vallikad for sparing her valuable time for us. I would also like to thank the college administration for giving the opportunity to the Student Wellbeing and Peer Counseling Committee to organize this event. I hope everyone has benefited from it. I would also like to thank all the participants. Because of your active participation, this webinar has become a success. To the participants, I would like to say that please check your chat box. The link for the form for the feedback, which is going to help you to generate the e-certificate, has been provided in the chat box. So please click on the link before you leave the meeting space. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you once again. It was very valuable for us. For you kindly take out your time for us. Thank you again.
Hopefully, I'll get a chance to interact with people later. I think this is, it becomes very virtual and one-sided. So hopefully one day I will get a chance. Thank you.
We'll look forward to that.
Yeah.
We'll look forward to that.
Thank you. Thank you, sir. Bye.
Okay, thank you, Madhu.
Thanks, sir. Bye, sir.
Bye-bye.